After a long couple years, living a bachelor life, it's been different for Jake getting committed to a real relationship. But Roxy seems to understand Jake in a way that none of his previous girlfriends had. Jake and Roxy recently got an apartment together. The apartment building was far from flashy or fancy, and the neighborhood was run down, but they got a cheap deal. Besides, the apartment didn't look too bad after Roxy decorated it with her psychedelic paintings and bohemian furniture. They were all handmade or picked up from thrift shops here and there, but it made the place look cozy. Roxy and Jake first met at a bar late one night. Roxy was all alone, crying over the counter. She looked miserable. And Jake thought it was the perfect opportunity to pick up a girl. They started talking, and it all began from there. Roxy was going through a bad time with her long-term boyfriend. He's changed. He's not like how he used to be. When they were younger, they did crazy things that Roxy would rather not mention. But ever since she and her boyfriend moved to the city and he got a job, Roxy noticed a change in him. He suddenly disapproved of Roxy's carefree lifestyle and kept urging her to settle down and start a normal life. Roxy, on the other hand, was a wild girl. She liked to have fun. She only worried about making the present the best it could be. And that was what Jake liked about Roxy. Jake was able to confide his deepest secrets in Roxy. Roxy's first reactions were always shock and surprise. "You're crazy." But over the days of getting to know Roxy, Jake knew it was Roxy who was the crazier one. After getting to know so much about him, Roxy never looked down on Jake. That's when Jake realized he couldn't let this girl slip out of his hands. Roxy was the one. She was the girl he wanted by his side through thick and thin. Fortunate for Jake, he was able to rescue Roxy from her awful boyfriend. And he and Roxy started seeing each other. Since Roxy was moving out of her ex's house, she and Jake decided to get a place of their own. Roxy and Jake were both in their late 20s, and unfortunately, they had been chronically unemployed, which meant they were always on a tight budget. Jake had earned an English degree at college, but it now lay uselessly in one of his files. Roxy dropped out of college years ago. She wanted to travel around and spend a few years relaxing. She later started investing herself in making artwork and selling it. Roxy and Jake made it work, and they were having fun living a life together. But there was still one big obstacle in their path. Roxy's ex-boyfriend. Roxy's ex would show up at their apartment now and then, creating a nuisance in their corridor. He would always put up a fight to take Roxy back. Jake used to hear him whining to Roxy. "Roxy, you're ruining your life. You're still so young, you can do better. This isn't the kind of life you want. You'll regret your decisions. Blah, blah, blah." Roxy's ex was a thorn in Jake's loose lifestyle, and it seemed like he couldn't get over the fact that Roxy had moved on. She was happy with Jake now. There was no way Jake would let anyone take Roxy away from him. Roxy and Jake were getting by just fine. They had each other, their hobbies, their likes and dislikes were so similar, it was shocking. Their happiness was a guiding light, and working together made their future look bright. As a matter of fact, Jake believed he made Roxy happier than she ever was with her ex. Her ex was a boring guy with a boring job living the same boring routine. Roxy often mentioned that he wasn't like this when they met, but ever since he got into some trouble with some people and after a couple years in jail, it changed him in totality. Other than the annoying visits from Roxy's ex, the apartment building was rather vacant. Only a few people lived on each floor, and even they moved out every few months or so. The supervisor didn't care to visit, and a timely payment kept him quiet. One busy evening, Roxy and Jake had just finished up on some long overdue business. It was Jake's turn to get the chores done. They always divided the chores, and Jake's usual duty was taking out the laundry. It sucked that they didn't have a washer or a dryer, but hey, that wasn't something a few quarters couldn't fix. Around midnight, Jake made his way down the building's long winding stairs with the laundry bag. Hurry, Jake, you've got a bunch of bags to carry down. The load was heavy after a long time of putting away the job. Jake murmured, I should have gotten this over with much earlier. It was a cold January night, and Jake didn't even have his sweats. They were stuffed up in the laundry bag he was carrying. The wind whipped against him. Jake was all alone dragging a boulder of a laundry basket, which was mostly filled to the brim with what was 70% of Roxy's clothes. The faster Jake could get over with, the better. So he rolled up his sleeves and inched across the parking lot. Jake tried to make things easier for Roxy. At 12 in the night, it was a ghost town of cars and streetlights, but it was better getting the job done at this time. Jake knew everyone else was inside their bland apartments, sleeping for the night. Struggling to carry this literal burden, Jake stumbled up to his van. Luckily, Roxy had parked towards the back. Hey there. Suddenly, a voice called out. Jake was bothered the minute he heard the calm voice. It was one too friendly to be authentic. He quickly turned around and stared at a figure in the darkness of the night. A tall man emerged out of the stillness. He took a quick glance around. He didn't have anyone else with him. The man was wearing a loose jacket. He grabbed firmly around his body. By the looks of it, it seemed like a middle-aged man, heavy frame and sloppy clothes. Jake slightly tossed the laundry basket up for a brief moment to regain control of both the clothes and, more importantly, his uneasiness. He gathered his courage and said, "Hey," which rather came out in an awkward tone. The tall man flashed a confident grin when he saw Jake's discomfort. His eyes stayed focused on Jake, and with every passing second of his glare, his smile became even more creepy. Jake had never seen him before, but then again, he didn't leave the apartment much. He usually got all the chores done at night. But this guy was a complete, smiling, weird, freaky stranger. And much to Jake's dawning horror, he realized they were the only ones out here, alone on this dark night. The guy said in a hoarse voice, "Looks like you need some help." Jake slipped one of his hands below the basket. He tightened his grip and said, "No thank you, I'm fine. Just getting the laundry done." Still grinning with that strange look on his face, the man reached towards Jake and said, "Let me help you out with that, buddy." Just then, Jake saw a flash of silver hidden in the man's hand. Nervously, he staggered back in anxiety. Jake was worried, thinking about what might happen. He was sure he was standing in front of a guy with bad intentions. If something were to happen, Roxy would be worried sick at home. "That's alright, I got this." With a forced laugh from his lips, the man grabbed the other side of the basket, just inches away from Jake's hand. No, gotta help out my neighbor," he insisted. And then, Jake felt the man's hungry touch hit his wrist. Immediately, his instinct took hold of him. It was something Roxy and Jake had in common. It was their defense mechanism against the world. Over their lives, both Roxy and Jake found themselves putting up with haters. Jake pulled away from the creep and placed the basket down. He reached inside of the laundry, through the mountain of wet and sticky clothes. Finally, he got a good grip of it. Roxy told him unwanted visitors at this time of the night. The gun warmed him up. Jake pointed it at the guy. "Get your hands off of my property." At once, like a frightened crook, the guy stumbled back and threw his hands up. He paced back, still holding what Jake thought was in his hand. "I didn't mean to. I didn't," he stammered before he fled down the parking lot. Within minutes, the guy was off to the darker depths of the corner buildings of the apartment complex, well out of Jake's sight. Smirking, Jake lowered the gun. Now feeling confident, he picked up the basket steady and unlocked the trunk of his van. He took a last glance around the parking lot. Nobody was around. Everyone was asleep. And Roxy was most likely getting her share of rest after a long time, especially feeling content and relieved that her ex wouldn't be showing up to create a havoc anymore. Jake tumbled the basket over in the trunk, and rather than the usual softness of the clothes, he heard a grisly thud. Leaning over, he peeled a few layers of red-stained clothes and looked at Roxy's ex under the loads of laundry. He grinned badly. "Gotta get my chores done." Roxy always made Jake responsible for this specific chore, getting rid of the remains. At first, this part was the most scary for Jake, but he had figured that laundry dumping worked every time. Now it was easy. A routine wrap-up to all the haters who got and would get in his and now Roxy's life as well. Jake tied the laundry bag again. victorious smile appeared on his face. Roxy and Jake would look forward to a better future together, now that they wouldn't have pesky, unwanted visitors knocking on their apartment door.
If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends and family.